Hello, I'm Kimberly Bishop, Associate State Director at AARP Michigan. Thank you for joining us to participate in this afternoon's first Caregiver Chat, where we will provide tips, information, and resources for family caregivers. In the wake of COVID-19, we have all had to change how we do things, and so today's topic is very timely. We'll be discussing how to use technology, specifically smart speakers, in your role as a caregiver. I'm pleased to announce that joining us today is Glen Ashlock. Glen Ashlock is a rehabilitation engineer at the Region 2 Area Agency on Aging. He is a certified assistive technology professional and has been providing assistive technology services for 30 years. He works with individuals with a wide variety of disabilities to help them get connected to technology and devices that can help make their lives better. Welcome, Glen, and thanks for joining us today.
Hey, Kimberly. Thanks for having me. It's good to see you and hear you, even if we're not in the same place.
Absolutely. I have a few questions that I'd like to ask, but we will also be taking questions from our audience, if that's okay.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. So if you're watching us and you have a question, please type it in the comments section, and I'll be able to ask the question to Glen. So before we get started, Glen, your bio stated that you're a certified assistive technology professional. What is assistive technology?
Assistive technology is any technology from something as simple as a built-up handle on a spoon to a whole house system that lets you control your lights and open doors and do all kinds of things using a computer. And what makes it assistive is that it is intended to help somebody with a disability or somebody who has maybe some characteristics of a disability just because they're aging. So, people who are aging, aging isn't a disability, but sometimes, we have problems with vision or balance or other things. And so we can use a little bit of help from technology. And that's what assistive technology is a way to help with those things.
So you mentioned vision. So are my glasses assistive technology?
Well, I think they should be. We don't think of them that way because it's so common, but it really meets the definition.
Okay. Because definitely they help me see better. So
yeah, me too.
I learned something new today. Thank you. Since our focus today is smart speakers, can you tell me what a smart speaker is and what kind of things a smart speaker can do? I have an Echo Dot that I use to play music. Is that a smart speaker?
Yeah, that's a great example. So a smart speaker is typically it's a standalone device, and it's kind of a fuzzy definition. You can expand it to include phones and other things. But for me, I think of it as a standalone device that you talk to it, and it will respond to you by playing music, like you said, connecting to your phone, controlling your house, giving you the weather, lots of things like that. So examples of that are this is the Echo Dot that you mentioned. So you can see it's kind of about the size of a hockey puck, maybe a little bit bigger than that. This is the original version of the Amazon Echo. It's a lot bigger. The new one's a little bit smaller than this, looks a little nicer, but I have the old one. This is the Google Home. That's basically they all do the same thing. Apple makes one, and then now there are some like this one. I don't know how well you can see that. That actually have video on them. So you not only can you talk to it and listen to it, but it will show you some videos and some things like that. So any of those devices are smart speakers. I tend to use the Amazon ones, the Echoes. So I know a little bit more about those and probably will use more examples related to them. But they're all basically the same and will do the same kinds of things, maybe in a slightly different way. So as I'm talking today, if I say, "Oh, the Echo does this," remember, really they all do that, and there's a few more out there that I didn't mention as well.
Thanks, Glenn. And we're not endorsing any particular product. We're just sharing information about smart speakers in general.
Yeah, my goal is just to educate everybody, let them know what they can do, and then if they're thinking, "Yeah, this might be for me," then they might want to look into, what does one do better than the other one? Are there features that they like? And then that's how they could make a decision from there.
Great, thanks. So we can just get started. How can I use a smart speaker in my role as a caregiver?
Yeah, that's a good question because usually when we think about them, we think like, "Oh, what can it do, for me?" And so certainly if you're helping the person you're caring for and making life easier for them, well, that's going to help you as a caregiver. So right there. So if there's things that they can do independently, that's going to help out the caregivers. Some examples of that are being able to turn on the lights or control the TV by just using their voice. You can ask for the weather. You can ask what time it is. Things like that. So those are things that we've learned that a lot of our the folks that we work with. One of the things I've heard with some people who are maybe having some memory problems, maybe early stages of dementia, they'll ask their caregiver over and over, "What time is it?" or "What's the weather going to be today?" And as a caregiver, no matter how much you love that person, sometimes that can start to wear you down a little bit. But they can ask their Echo that 20 times a day, and she'll be just as happy to answer on the 20th time as she was on the first. So that's certainly one way that it can help the caregiver is
So
just by making things easier.
okay, thank you. And I didn't mean to interrupt you, but who can use a smart speaker? Are there specific physical skills or cognitive skills required? Because you mentioned, if someone had dementia, they could ask the device 20 times, what time it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a couple requirements as far as physically. You need to be able to talk to it in a voice that's fairly consistent and clear, so that it understands you. They do have a capability to do a little bit of learning, but pretty much, you've got to be able to speak clearly enough. As far as cognitively, it really is just remembering what the commands are. And the biggest thing is to say its name first. So with the Echo, you say Alexa, and then ask it the question. And so that Alexa is kind of the word that wakes it up. And it's different for the other systems, but they still have a word that wakes it up. And if you don't wake it up first, then no matter what you ask it, it's not going to respond. The nice thing about these is they're sort of natural language devices, so you don't have to ask a really very specific question. You can ask it, what's the weather? What's it like outside today? How warm is it outside? So there's lots of different ways that you can say it. Like when you're talking to a person, if I ask you any of those questions, you'd know I'm asking about the weather. And the cool thing is these devices know that I'm asking about the weather too, and are going to answer pretty much the same way no matter how I phrase the question. So the hardest part, I think, is remembering to say that name to wake it up, and then ask your question fairly quickly after you've said the name. Because that's the other thing. Sometimes people will wake it up and then kind of think about the question they want, and it's gone back to sleep by the time they get the question out. So it does take a little bit of practice.
Okay. It sounds like you can use these even if you're not tech savvy. Are they hard to use?
No, like I said, once you've got it set up, it's very simple. And right, you don't need to have any technical skills at all. Setting it up is an issue. You have to have one of the requirements for using it is that you need to have Wi-Fi in the house. So more and more older adults have Wi-Fi now. It's actually fairly common. I know that there's still some underserved populations that don't have access to Wi-Fi or can't afford it. And, that's certainly an issue. But as we see more people using it, then, or getting Wi-Fi, then we can see more people using these devices. Setting it up is relatively straightforward. You do have to have a phone or a tablet to set it up. And that phone or tablet doesn't need to be in the home when you're using it. So I've worked with some people who, they don't have a smartphone, but their son does. So their son will come over when I'm there to set it up. We'll set it up using their son's phone, and then he can leave and they'll still be able to use the tablet. I wouldn't say you need a lot of technical skills, actually very minimal technical skills to set it up if everything goes smoothly. But, with any kind of technology, if you run into a glitch, and it's not uncommon, then, you got to do a little problem solving, but it's pretty easy. The other nice thing is that there is a lot of videos on the internet that show you how to do it and that will kind of walk you through it. And so, you can try using those and get some instruction. Just a little plug for us, for my agency right now, we're putting together some videos that are intended specifically for older adults. Short, simple, hopefully easy to understand. And one of the things that we haven't got to it yet, but we're hoping to do is how to set up your smart speaker. So maybe down the road, we'll have an easy way to help people with that.
Very good. Remember, if you have a question for Glenn, please type it in the chat window. And Glenn, we do have our first question, which is a little bit off topic, but what are a few must-have apps for caregivers, especially during the pandemic? Are you aware of any?
Well, I assume if we're talking apps that we're looking at, things related to the smart speakers. So things that I think are really potentially helpful for caregivers. Things you can do are like grocery lists. So if I'm home and I think of something that I need, I can just wake up my device and say, add milk to my grocery list, add bread to my grocery list. And then my caregiver can pull my list up on their phone. So before they come over to my house, they can pull up the list, stop at the grocery store, pick up the things that I need, rather than coming to the house, talking to me, getting the list, going back to the store, coming back to the house. So I think that's one that would be great for caregivers to be able to use. Another nice feature is that it's called drop-in on the Echoes and has different names on the different devices. And that basically treats the device like a intercom. And so if I'm a caregiver for somebody and they're upstairs and I need to go downstairs and do laundry or, do some things where I'm not going to be close to them and I might not be able to hear them if they call for help, I could have a device in the basement in the laundry room and have the device in the room they're in and just kind of turn it on and it would act like a monitor for the room. So if I can hear them asking me a question, I might just be able to answer it and not have to go upstairs. Or if they're calling for help, then I can go up and help them out with that. It helps with, you can manage calendars. So, if a person has multiple caregivers, that they can enter their appointments into their calendar. And again, those caregivers can all then pull them up on their smartphone and look at it and see, okay, so dad has a doctor's appointment on Thursday. We're all looking at his calendar, and I can say, hey, I've got Thursday afternoon off. I can take him to the doctor. So being able to communicate that way is potentially something that I think would be really helpful for caregivers.
You mentioned dementia a while back, and I know that music is really something that can assist with dementia patients in terms of calming their mood and that kind of thing. With the smart speaker, how are you able to can you listen to radio stations, or how could you listen to music using a smart speaker?
Yeah, that's one of the great features. That's one that I use mine for probably the most of anything, is listening to the radio. So you can say a specific station. So you can play Michigan radio if I want to listen to NPR. I can say play, sports talk radio if that's what I like to listen to. I can say play, if there's a particular music station that I like, I can ask it to play that. I can say play country music. I can say play Johnny Cash songs. I can say play Ring of Fire if I want that particular Johnny Cash song. So it really gives you a lot of options, what you want to listen to. Different, the kind of music you want, the mood. You can say play happy songs, and it'll just give you a variety of things, that maybe will put you in a nice mood. If I'm feeling, maybe a little agitated, I could say play calming music, and maybe that would help calm me down. And then, like you said, there's a lot of research showing that playing music from our youth that are, songs that we feel and connect to can be very helpful. So, I can play, in my case, play 70s music, and, play those songs that I listened to when I was younger. So, maybe that would be a good thing.
So Glenn, how much do smart speakers cost? Are they really expensive, and are there monthly fees associated with them?
Yeah, that's a great question. The basic ones, the smaller ones, like the one you have, they start about $35. Sometimes you can get them on sale for a little less. Sometimes they're a little more, but they're in that ballpark. And then, depending on what other features you need, I should back up a little bit. The small one has all the same features as the big one does. Really, the difference is that the bigger ones have, bigger, nicer speakers. So if playing music is the main thing that you want to do, it might be worth it to have a bigger one that has a little bit better sound from it, but it doesn't have any other features. So they start, like I said, about $35 and go up to $100, maybe a little bit more than that. I mentioned that you have to have internet. So once it connects to your internet, and you have to have some sort of, you probably pay for your internet every month, but you don't have to pay any fee for the device. So it's a one-time purchase, and then it'll work with your internet from there out, and you don't have to pay anything else.
Okay, Glenn, we have a couple questions. I'm not sure necessarily that you'll be able to answer because they're a little bit off topic, but I'm going to ask anyway.
All right.
Do you have any information on iPhone health records? And I'm assuming that's an app.
Yeah. There's a health app on the iPhone, and I think that there can be some ways to connect it. So it might be things like if you take your blood pressure, you can tell your smart speaker and it'll record it in your app. I'm not certain of that, but that kind of rings a bell for me. With the smart speakers, there's an emphasis on telehealth now and being able to talk to your doctors and do things. That is one drawback of these devices. While you can make a phone call using your smart speaker, it's not HIPAA compliant. So you can call a friend and talk about your medical condition all you want, but your doctor wouldn't be able to have a conversation with you about your medical issues using it. So they're working on that, but right now it wouldn't meet that goal.
So are there any games that you could play with it? Maybe brain games or things like that might help someone?
Yeah, there are a lot of games. I mentioned earlier I like to listen to NPR, and there's a show on Saturdays, Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me. It's kind of a humorous quiz show, but you can say, play the Wait, Wait game for me, and then you get to kind of play along with it. There's a question of the day. Every night I have one by my bed, and I use it as an alarm clock and things like that. But every night we get in bed, my wife and I ask it the question of the day, and it gives us a trivia question and keeps track of your points and how many days in a row you've played it. So that's one that would certainly be kind of a brain teaser, keep you a little bit sharper on that. But yeah, there's lots of other games on it that you can play too. So that's a nice thing. Again, if the caregiver is busy doing something, the person can play a game and not feel like that he or she's alone. My dad my dad had one, and he one day told me, if you say good morning, Alexa, she'll give you a fun fact of the day. And I asked, well, how did you learn that? And he said, well, I just said good morning to her one day. And she started talking to him. Alexa, stop. I have to remember not to say her name because mine just turned on and started giving me a fact of the day.
That's true. They do seem like they're always listening. I know there have been people who have expressed some security concerns about these devices because, as you said, they're always listening, waiting, for their wake up word. What do you think about that in terms of, are they safe to use from a technology perspective? Because, there are just so many challenges and people aren't always comfortable with technology.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it really comes down to your risk level. I think that they're safe in terms of, there's so many of them out there. To try to monitor all of them would be really difficult. And, like my house, they'd monitor mine for a few days and say, oh, there's nothing going on there. I don't want to listen to them.
Right.
But I certainly can't guarantee, when people ask me that, I can't guarantee that there's not a way to hack into it, or that, somebody's, in the government's not in there listening to it. I think, again, relatively safe, but, if you're planning a big crime, I wouldn't have your smart speaker turned on anywhere nearby. So it really comes down to your level of risk. As far as it always listening, it's, I always tell people it's kind of like your dog. Your dog can be laying there sleeping and you can be having a conversation and the dog's not going to do anything until you say, a few key words. You say the dog's name, or you say go for a walk, and suddenly the dog's popped up and is listening to you. And that's the way your speaker should be too. It shouldn't really be listening until you say its name and wake it up.
Okay. Just a reminder, if anyone has a question, please put it in the comments section. But we are getting close to the end of our time because we just wanted to have a short conversational chat. And one question that I would like to ask those who are watching is, what other topics might you like to hear us chat about? But Glenn, I'd like to ask you if you have any additional thoughts or anything that you missed that you wanted to share about using smart speakers, especially as a family caregiver, whether you are in the same house with the person or not, because it sounds like there are some ways that you can use it even if you're not in the same house with them.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. You don't have to be in the same house. You can be connected. So again, my dad didn't, the smart, the buttons that you push to call for help, the personal emergency response units. My dad would not wear one of those. He needed one, but there's no way he was going to do it. So but he liked technology. And so he had a couple of the smart speakers throughout his house. And his theory was if he fell, he could talk to it and call for help. So it certainly is not a system I would recommend, but it was better than nothing for him. But the other thing that makes me think of him is he doesn't like to use his smartphone minutes. So he had an Echo, I had an Echo. We could use the Echo to talk to each other and didn't have to use his smartphone minutes. So that's certainly a way to do that. The thing that I mentioned earlier about the drop-in where you could listen from the basement to the upstairs, I could also drop in at him at his home. So if I tried calling him and he didn't answer, I could drop in and see if I could hear anything, for instance. So I could do that. So even though we live an hour away, I could maybe monitor a little bit of what's going on in his house. So yeah, it gives you a few things like that. And then I mentioned being able to add lists and communicate from his smart speaker to my device. So if I was going to his house, I could stop and pick up some things for him, those kinds of things.
So Glenn, if someone needed help setting up a device, how could they get help?
Well, I mentioned that there's a lot of videos online, and certainly that's a good place to start. Again, trying not to make it a plug for my agency, but that is one of the things we do if you're within our service area, that I can help do that.
And Glenn, what is your service area?
That's probably, I should have mentioned that. We cover Jackson, Hillsdale, and Lenawee counties, but because what I do is fairly unique, I actually will go outside of my service area a little bit if we can do that. But even if somebody is not in my service area, even if they're pretty far away, I would be glad to always. People can send me an email, or I would be glad to talk to them and try to give them some information and get them started. I wouldn't be able to spend like all afternoon necessarily unless we could figure out a way to do that. But yeah, I'm glad to talk to people and try to direct them to somebody. Centers for Independent Living and some other agencies have technology people throughout the state. And again, if somebody's not near me, I might be able to direct them to somebody who could maybe meet with them or be a little bit closer and help them out. So I'm glad to be a resource to get people started and answer their questions.
Well, thank you, Glenn. Thanks for joining us today to talk about how to use smart speakers. I know that you have lots of other information, so I'm hoping that we'll be able to do this again. I learned a lot. I'm sure that our viewers did too. Region 2 Area Agency on Aging has been such a great partner for AARP and such a great resource for those in the counties that you serve. So I'm hoping I can convince you to join me again for another chat as we look to help support older adults and their families. So just thank you. I appreciate you being here today and look forward to doing it again soon.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm so glad to have the opportunity to work with you. And I feel the same way about AARP. You reach people that we don't necessarily. And so it's wonderful when we can work together and maybe reach more people and spread the word about what we're doing. And hopefully we can then, help those people out. So I really appreciate the opportunity and would love to come back and talk about other things. If people found this interesting, then yeah, there's lots more we can get into.
And if you didn't find it interesting, tell us what you would find interesting so we can do a better job next time.
Yeah.
So again, thank you. And on that note, we are going to end our first caregiving chat. We look forward to comments and information about what you might like to hear next time. So thank you for joining us and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.